So welcome everyone. I'm Kate Williams. I'm CEO of 1% for the Planet, and I'm with Ben Anderson, who's the CEO of B Lab US and Canada, and also with Austin Whitman, who is CEO of Climate Neutral. And the three of us did a panel discussion together that was aired earlier today, and now we're really psyched that we have this chance to connect with all of you to answer your questions and just dig a little further into the topic at hand, which is certification and how do organizations like ours work to prevent greenwashing and really to hold businesses accountable and to bring businesses together around sort of making change in really credible ways. So we very much want to hear your questions and speak to you about what you're interested in. So there's two ways you can do questions. One, we can invite you in on stage with us. And then you can also drop your questions into the chat. So I see David in looking to join us. So why don't we start there, and then we have some questions in the chat. So we'll go over to those. So without further ado, we'll get started. So David, I'm going to bring you onto the stage so we will be able to see and hear you. And you can ask us your question.
Hi, I'm actually Joni, David's brother and business partner. It's been a whole these last 2 days. But thank you. We just joined 1% for the Planet, Kate, and
thank you.
We're super thrilled about that. And I guess the B Corp was our next step. We are in the hemp space, and so with that being such a new world and all of these certifications that are kind of non-existent or hard to find within our manufacturers, what have you seen, I guess, Ben, as far as like the hemp and marijuana space?
Yeah, great question. And we, like, as we grow into new industries, we're always having to develop new standards and understand from a gig economy to even breast milk supplements. And so we will kind of look at standards, and we have done that for your industry. And so that's all kind of posted on our website. So you should take a look, and also look at other companies kind of that you find that are parallel to you that may already be in the community, and you could look up their profiles and even how they score, because our scores are transparent.
Thank you. Yeah, I just need to
there's a lot of overlap, and I'm glad you started with 1% and work your way through all three of us.
Yeah, for sure. It's a little daunting and scary because of all the regulations and different regulations in each state. And so we're finding that I think the daunting aspect of it is like, it's not just 1 hour of our time in the hemp space. It's like 5 hours of our time each time we go at something in a new state. And we're LLC'd in Chicago and working out of LA, and our manufacturers in Nevada. And so that in itself has been a situation. Yeah. But we'll definitely look on the site.
Great.
And one thing I would just offer there, and when we're done here, you can just like hit leave, and that will just move you out of the off of the stage if you want to do that. But just one other thing I did want to share is I think the power of our 3 certifications, one of the powers of them is the community. So there's a lot of other companies out there who are doing the hard work to figure stuff out. And so these communities are great places to kind of share learning and to benefit from legwork that others have done and to share the legwork that you've done. So that's also another thing to consider, is just like you leveraging the community. So 1% for the Planet, we do have other companies in that space. So you could potentially, make some connections and do some learning there.
For sure.
Great.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to go over to the chat. So there's some great questions sitting there, and I'm going to try and hit all of them. But if anyone feels like I'm missing them, you can always just like move into the moderation panel. So going to Ben Whitney's question, preliminary question about B Corps, why the corporate form to begin with? And this is a question for Ben. Do you have clients who ask you whether or not forming as a corporation / B Corp is the best route forward to begin with?
Great question. I think maybe that distinction is between even for-profit and nonprofit. That's what I read in that question, but I'll kind of give a broad-based answer. I mean, B Lab is a nonprofit, and so we certainly believe in that form, and that's great for scaling certain types of social impact approaches. But our whole focus is on businesses, because we feel like that's the way that we can most quickly and effectively address kind of systemic problems. And in particular, corporate forms are good ways to attract capital for growth. And so that's one way, but there are different corporate forms that you can choose, from the LLC to a partnership, co-op, a C Corp that you elect to become a benefit corp. And our whole approach is that you're governing around stakeholders. And so we have a stakeholder governance requirement that we ask companies to follow in order to be certified. So there's a lot of choices for you, and we really suggest that you get some real counsel on the pros and cons of each of those approaches.
Great, thanks. Good question and good stuff to think about. So going to Nathan's question, and Austin, this one will come to you. We'll at least start with you. What advice do you have for a small company with a long and complex global supply chain in terms of pursuing carbon neutrality? We're a small coffee roaster with a goal of becoming carbon neutral, and the supply chain aspect of this challenge is pretty daunting.
It sure is, Nathan, and you're not alone. So there are a lot of companies in this space or in this position. Just get started is my first advice. I mean, there are plenty of widely accepted ways to estimate what your impact is, and kind of our framework is built around this assumption that pretty much most people out there are not experts in carbon neutrality or carbon emissions. And if we expect everybody to become an expert before they do anything, then we'll never get anywhere. So we've actually, this is interesting, because we've done a decent amount of research on this specific question of coffee roasting and the science of carbon emissions tied to coffee roasting. And there's a reasonable amount of data out there, but a long way to go. So we've built everything around the greenhouse gas protocol. So I would say start by looking at the greenhouse gas protocol framework. You can even learn about it on our website, and it'll tell you sort of where your carbon emissions are likely coming from, and then work from there.
Great, thanks. And I do think with all of our certifications, that idea of like taking the first step and not feeling that you have to bite it all off at once is a really important mentality. And that's one of the value of these processes, is that it creates a way to get on the pathway and to become part of a system and part of a community that can help you to take those subsequent steps, because it can feel overwhelming to know what to do. So I think it's great. It's a great question. And Austin, I really appreciate that perspective. This next question, I think, may ask for all of us to speak to it. So this, Ron, is your question. You mentioned having a deck outlining the process and timelines for all 3 certifications. I guess maybe we'll start with Ben, because there's a particular B Corp element to this. So as the B Corp standards evolve, which is something that happens as you improve, how can we mitigate the risk of the standards evolving in ways that don't align with our core values? So Ben, I'll turn it over to you, and we'll go from there.
Great question. Yes, and the standards are always evolving. We're in our 6th version that's currently in place and already working on the next version. And we have over 1,000 people who have commented on the standard. So I think you want a standard to be evolving because the world is changing. And so within our system, a company needs to get to 80 points, and there's about 200 different points that you can get depending on the assessment that applies to your geography and company size in terms of employees. And so there's lots of ways up the mountain, we say. And so if you're focused on pay equity, you might be trying to get points on the ratio of the lowest paid to the highest paid employee, or you may be paying a living wage. And so those things can accomplish things in a certain direction, but there's different ways to accomplish it. So we're not rigid in how you get up there. And I think with the 200 points, there's lots of ways for you to have high verified social and environmental impact.
I would echo, I'll just echo quickly the importance. I agree, Ben, on the importance of moving things forward, especially because so much is changing in the sustainability space and the carbon space in particular for us. The other thing I would encourage people to keep in mind is even if things don't match or look exactly as you want them to, the power of doing something that represents what a whole group of businesses is doing is to us far more significant than if one business says, well, I'm not quite aligned with that standard, so I'm just going to write my own rules. Because the collective power, the momentum that shows is really, really significant. And so we encourage people to just say, we're part of this movement.
And I think that's a great point. And I would add to that it goes both ways, at least speaking for 1% for the Planet. I know we often, all the time, are learning from our members about kind of ways that we can make our certification serve the membership better, either in terms of how we implement the support that we provide to our members, or how we think about the larger model. And we maintain our sort of clarity and guardrails and credibility, but I think it's the questions and the values that we hear from our members that are often play a huge role in shaping those sort of standards and ways of engaging. So I think, Ron, just thinking about what you were saying, I think or the way you framed it in your question, I think the clarity around your core values is a contribution to the overall community, in the same way that the standards that are evolving is, a contribution and, opportunity for you. So I do feel like these networks are powerful because the information flows both ways. Reminder that if anyone does want to come up on stage, you are more than welcome to. In the meantime, I'm going to keep just going through the chat questions, of which there are many, so that's awesome. I'm going to drop down to Hattie's question. I work in the furniture manufacturing industry, and we're a 1% for the Planet member. Right on. We recently were Cradle to Cradle certified. How does the Cradle to Cradle process compare to the B Corp certification for manufacturing? And what's the value of adding a B Corp certification as well? And I'll just broaden that a little bit, because I think it'd be interesting to hear from Austin as well. I think, why would you want more of any of the certifications? So if you're B Corp, why would you add 1% for the Planet? Why would you add climate neutral? I think thinking about how they stack together is something that, we can all reflect on a bit. But maybe, Ben, why don't you start with Hattie's specific question, and then Austin, maybe I'll turn it over to you to just talk more broadly about that, layering of the different certifications and how they work together.
Yeah, sounds good. First, we love Cradle to Cradle, and we recognize that in our certification. And we do stand on the shoulders of lots of other certifications and roll those up. And ours is, comprehensive and holistic, looking at social, environmental, worker, customer, and governance practices. And it's a free tool for you to use. So I'd encourage you, if you've gone through that super rigorous process, what you'll see is you have those domains opened up to see where there may be some gaps in how you're operating the company, and particularly looking at the impact business model you have. It's how does doing more business end up in something that's better for the earth and for society? And so that would be what we call our impact business model. And so I think you may find some ways that open up new pathways, and then if certifying helps you accomplish that and hold you accountable to that, then I would encourage you to join the B Corp community.
And I would say the results of the companies that we've certified suggest that there's a lot of value to doing these things side by side. We had about a third of our companies in the first year of certification, which was last year, who were also 1% for the Planet members. And the way these two work together is so we're a nonprofit, so we're a 1% for the Planet nonprofit partner. And some of the offset providers that our companies work with are also 1% for the Planet members. And we similarly had a good chunk of companies who are B Corps also get certified with us. And we look at our certification as really an underscoring, kind of a punctuation mark under the climate piece of what goes into B Corp, with B Corp being, as Ben said, representative of a more holistic set of ESG factors. And we think climate is critically important. And so in the portfolio of things that you're doing to get B Corp certified, and the portfolio of things that you're doing to contribute to environmental nonprofits under the 1% label, underscore the climate thing by getting by getting certified by us. So we love it. We often see, the three labels side by side, and it just feels like, okay, great, this is a business doing the right thing. And more our teams are working together to figure out points of alignment. We have all kinds of behind the scenes coordination to make it easier for people to do both. So hopefully we'll see more of that.
Great. And I'm going to use that as a pivot to jump down. Jenna has a good question that I think would be good for us all to reflect on. What advice would we provide to companies on balancing the dollars to certify or participate in our models versus using those dollars for impact or programs to make direct reductions or offsets, or, I would add like donations to nonprofits. So why put the money into being part of one of these certifications as opposed to just the direct impact? So which one of you would like to take that first, and then I can chime in on this as well.
I'm happy to take it. I think it's a great question, and I think you always should be thinking about how to use your money wisely. I think in sort of joining any one of these certifications, you're going to use your dollars more effectively, and particularly as you grow and you're kind of making strategic plans. I think this is going to help you to kind of execute on your strategy better. But you got to sort of make that. It's hard to know without knowing what your strategy is. But I can at least speak for B Corps, and I'm pretty sure for all of us, is the ROI you get on the investment of this is many, many, many fold. And we don't spend a lot of time like we did in the early days trying to justify the value that you get back from those certification dollars. Certainly in the early years we did, and that was a big deal. And it kind of rarely comes up because people are able to get such a multiple off that spend.
Yeah, and I'll build on that to say, for 1% for the Planet, one of the things that we've learned, again, back to what I was saying earlier about information flowing both ways, that we've learned from our members is that the value of us providing support on how to do environmental philanthropy strategically, effectively, in line with your brand is significant. So the value of allocating dollars to the certification is that you gain access to the expertise. In our case, it's around environmental philanthropy. And, we've just had, numerous members, let us know, it's like, oh, like I just didn't get that giving could play this strategic role and be so integrated into my strategy and my business. So, not only am I now, giving these dollars in this committed way, but I'm doing so in a way that's more aligned with my brand, that's driving the impact that I really want to see to nonprofits I wasn't even aware of before, but that are, really great fit for our organization. And, the list goes on, and it looks a little different for each company, but that, that value is there. And then the other thing I would add too, and Austin had touched on this earlier, but being part of a community doing that enables you to get the additional values, not only of the kind of shared standards, so, communicating a message that, consumers get and that they can, wrap their heads around. And that's important because then you're communicating a message that ripples out the impact. But additionally, there's just a lot of value across the community. So we have members who are giving their 1% and we're certifying it, but then we're also learning that they're connecting with another member to figure out, back to the earlier question, to figure out hemp standards or, to figure out how they can eliminate more plastics from their packaging. So suddenly there's all of these additional values that the community has enabled you to step into beyond your environmental philanthropy. So I think that community effect is a big value add of participating in the model. Austin, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, the cost of our certification is primarily in the offsetting and reduction. So the answer is, that the programs to make direct reductions or offsets, make up most of the cost of certification. The other part of certification is really carbon measurement, which is something that all companies should be doing anyway. And to Ben's point, the value of certification is significant because the information that you take coming out of it is instructive for years and years of planning, and it really brings you up to a point where you can actually start to make direct program changes or planning decisions around the information. So
yeah. And I'm going to use that to pivot to a question that Robert has added. At what point do all of these certifications become an alphabet soup, overwhelming the customer and opening the door for insincere businesses to fake it? The examples of free trade product, or we give 1% back. So, and the question ends with, do you envision a future umbrella certification that bundles the most impactful certifications together and is a foundation for all forward-thinking brands? So the Uber certification. So it's a great question, and definitely one that we, I know our companies do think about, like how to sort of allocate their, their space for logos. So this is a great one for us to reflect on. Who would like to take a first crack at it?
I guess there aren't very many letters in the alphabet. There are only 3. So if people can't keep track of 3, then I don't know. But, I guess the way when people ask how much time a consumer should spend sort of interacting with climate neutral, I often say, maybe 45 seconds a week, 15 kind of looking for the label, and then 30 seconds telling other people, telling other companies that they should get certified. There are probably some interesting things that the 3 of us could do over time to kind of create a more of a conjoined message. But even now, 3 letters in the alphabet doesn't seem like too many.
We would consider ourselves an umbrella kind of roll up of lots of other certifications. So we've sought to kind of be sort of provide that value in the marketplace. But I also would say, aside from the external benefits, I believe there are enough benefits derived kind of internally to the company without engaging your consumer. And it's only for that reason, the last couple of years, that we've put much more time and energy into consumer awareness. We've had high sort of business leader awareness, but I think there's tons of things that will help your company. And so, yes, I agree it's confusing. There are thousands of certifications, but there are a number of them that have kind of risen up. And I think it's important for consumers to become more knowledgeable, and they need to learn where they're putting their dollars to work, because those choices really have strong impacts. So we want to continue to educate and not dumb things down for consumers.
And I'll build on that. I mean, one of the things that we really try to do, and as part of the value add that we focus on bringing to our membership, is that amplification of the brand and of what it means, so that it does have meaning for consumers, because they are rightly skeptical of the faking it. And I think, 1% for the Planet, B Corp, and Climate Neutral are all really important examples of not faking it and really doing the opposite of wanting to say you're doing something but not really doing it. So building that consumer awareness is really important, and that's something 1% for the Planet has focused a lot on, both in terms of our own storytelling, but also how we support our members to tell the story. And like Ben, we also do have a sort of roll-up umbrella role. We count like Climate Neutral and B Corp are nonprofits in our network. So, giving to those counts towards the 1%. So for certain brands, they are members of all, but they may choose to lead with one or the other, or to sort of position them, in a way that they're consistent around that storytelling. So it's a really good question. And again, I do think the important role of certifications is, really setting up that opposite of greenwashing, because we create these, high standards and a consistent way of telling the story. So we are getting close to the end of our time. I do want to point people to the polls that we have, which we just put up there. We're not going to do anything with them other than show the results. So I'm just going to click on the results right now just to see if any of you have answered and see what we learned from them. And I don't actually know if it's working. I've never done these before, so I'm not seeing anything. So I'm going to go back to the chat, and we're gonna bring it home with. There are some other great questions, and I apologize we missed some of them just due to time. But I think as a kind of a last word, just want to invite all of you to leave here with just some sense of like how you can take a next step. So many of you who have identified yourself in the chat are members of one of our certifications. I'm guessing some of you are not, and probably very few of you are engaged with all 3 of them, but we all have a lot of thoughts on how you can take action. So like to invite, we'll start with Ben and then we'll go to Austin, and then I'll wrap it up with just, one thing that you can do coming out of this session to take action and move forward.
Yeah, one thing is just crack open the B impact assessment. I put the link in there before. It's a public good. It's a free tool. There are over 100,000 businesses that just use it and to learn and to align their company with their values. So just crack it open and take a look. And I would say just like dedicate a little bit of time every Friday for 3 weeks in a row and learn more, do the same with any one of these certifications.
I would say get your employer, get your business, get everybody to get certified by all of us. The thing that we're trying to do is mobilize consumers at a large scale to step in and show companies that there's demand for the kinds of practices that the three of us certify. And that consumer influence really needs to be shown at a large scale if we want to achieve the goals that we all have.
Great. And I would say, just harkening back to what Austin said about, just taking one step, I would, invite you into that sort of 1% philosophy that if every day, every week, every year, you think about like, what's my 1%? So at a company, it's 1% of your sales. In a day, it's 1% of your time or your money. In a year, there's a bunch of different ways you can slice it up. And so we have a certified model for individuals and for businesses where you can commit to giving back your 1%, and we will help you stay accountable to that. And that's super powerful. And one of the ways to really move into that is just to reflect on that idea of everyone has a 1%, and that's how we can step into making big change together. So really appreciate all of you in the audience for asking your great questions. I do apologize that we weren't able to get to all of them, but really great to have you challenging us with good questions. Again, that's what keeps us evolving in great ways. And also huge thanks to Ben and Austin. It's been great to spend some time with you talking about these things. And we always love working together. So this has been a great spark to continue some of our ongoing conversations. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. And we will look forward to continuing the conversation another time.